Hey everybody, welcome to My Green Pets. I'm William Green, and today I'm recording live. I'm not doing a voiceover. I'm going to try to talk to you as I look at my plants here and hopefully get you an update because we haven't seen these guys for a while. So let's have a look. A lot of exciting things are happening. Days are longer, very sunny, and a lot of exciting things on the way. Okay, well the first plant we were going to look at has to be Hal, the Bulbophyllum echinolabium. And Hal has two flower buds getting ready to pop open. This one especially is a really nice size, and then this one behind it won't be far behind. And those will possibly, I don't think they'll be open at the same time, but eventually what happened last time Hal bloomed was with multiple spikes was that somehow all of the flowers they end up opening at the same time, so that'll be cool to see. And there's actually another spike down here, spike number 3, that is quickly catching up, and it won't be long before we're going to have 3 open flowers on Hal. He is really looking impressive. The only thing is I'm a little bit worried because, not too worried, but just irritated, I guess you could say, that Hal is one of the plants that I have that's experiencing some leaf spot, and it really looks like it might be a result of fungus, some kind of a fungal infection. I'm not really familiar with how fungal infections work, but you can see just really not very nice there. So hopefully with the newest growth we'll see a change in that, but definitely something I'm going to keep an eye on. Okay, let's move on over to the Catasetum types. I have 3 of these orchids. Now this one is actually a Fredclarkeara, which is a mix of Cattleya, Mormodia, and Catasetum. It didn't bloom last year, but it's got a really huge growth on it this year. It's really early and lots of roots pushing out, and it's got last year's big bulb that I thought for sure was going to bloom. Didn't bloom last year, but maybe this bulb, maybe this new one will. Right next to it we have Cygnodia's Wine Delight. Also really nice big growth on it for this early in the season. It's end of April, and last year's bulb was enormous but only put out 6 flowers. So maybe this big bulb is going to propel this newest growth to put out some more flowers in the fall. And then finally, a little bit more timely on schedule, this is Mormodia Jumbo World and my first Catasetum type. It is probably a lot of your plants are more in this stage where it's just kind of come up, and I'm really hoping to see a nice big bulb on this plant pop up. It bloomed last year, but a lot of the flowers kind of didn't come out right. They kind of fell off before they bloomed, so hopefully we're going to have a little bit better show from this plant. But finally, after a couple years of producing some really little bulbs, it produced a really nice big one last year, so we're looking for more of the same of that this year. Alright, you guys recognize Phalaenopsis schilleriana. I had it at home while it was in bloom, but now I've brought it back to the greenhouse to grow. You can see this is another plant that I have that's had some leaf spotting, and I really don't know. Again, I don't know if this is a fungal issue, but I'm certainly not real thrilled about it. The leaves look like they are doing okay in spite of the spots, but yeah, this winter I don't know if it was just too cold or too wet or what, but several plants did not like it at all. This Bulbophyllum lobbii is another one. It put out this nice beautiful leaf, and then about a month after the leaf came out, it immediately started spotting like this. This Stanhopeia oculata did the same thing. So I'm hoping that these are just kind of surface problems, and that the new growths that we see are going to come out with nice clean green leaves and no spots. This little guy, this is used to be a Neophonetia or Neophonetia falcata, and this little guy blooms in the summer. It's doing really well, tons of little growths on it, and it's going to put out a nice show for us. This is my Bulbophyllum medusae. Bloomed a couple months ago against all odds, and again, this plant has got one of its new leaves has got black splotches on it. Again, I'm guessing this is fungus. I've never seen this kind of splotching on this plant before. So pretty annoying, but I'm not actually going to do anything about it. I'm just going to hope that the warm temperatures, decreased moisture of the spring and summertime is going to keep that from happening again on the new growths. And then one more Bulbophyllum I wanted to look at. This is Lovely Elizabeth. And Lovely Elizabeth has been growing like crazy ever since I've been keeping her here in the greenhouse. But when I was growing her outdoors, she would bloom every fall or spike every fall. And this year, or for the past 2 years, I've seen nothing on her, only growth. So that makes me wonder. I've heard that some Bulbophyllums will only bloom if there's a drop in nitrogen at the end of the season. I know that's kind of weird sounding, but I'm not quite sure. Maybe the constant nutrition and even some of the growth hormones that are used here at the greenhouse might cause it to keep growing instead of entering into a bloom cycle. So if you are a Bulbophyllum expert and you've got a thought on that, I'd really like to hear it. Back in the back here, I'm not going to disturb it, but this is Diania ophrydis, and you may have seen it in my videos from this winter. It was nothing but these white bulbs just kind of sticking out of a pot for a couple months, but the new growths are pushing out really quickly, and we should be able to see a bloom spike popping out of that newest growth within the next month or so. And the cool thing about it this year is that it has, I've counted at least 5 growths on it, so it'll be really cool if they are all up and blooming at the same time. You're gonna see when it blooms why this is called the cattail orchid. Alright, well, if you know your orchids and you're looking at my collection, you know that the majority of my collection are Cattleyas. And just wanted to look at a couple of the different types that I have. This one was sent to me by Stephen Van Camp and Lewis recently. This is a Cattleya walkeriana. Super excited about this one. It's got a new growth here, and then another one kind of hidden down in the pot you can't see very well. But the question is going to be, will there be flower buds on either one of these new growths? That would certainly be cool. I've got it potted in granite in a plastic pot, and I'm hoping that it's going to adapt well to these conditions. It's kind of getting a little wrinkly on the leaves, so it needs to grow some new roots, but hopefully it's going to be able to adapt. Next to that, this is a classic Cattleya hybrid called Jose Marti. If you've ever heard of Cattleya bobels or bobbets, they're both classic white Cattleyas, and according to what I've read, Jose Marti used to be used for the cut flower industry because it blooms around Mother's Day. So it was really valuable in having lots of white blooms available for cut flowers on Mother's Day. This plant was recently repotted into granite in a terracotta pot, and the roots have taken to the granite quite well. You know, in the greenhouse, conditions are so warm and humid and wet all year that the bark that I've been using just disintegrates. Within a year, it just turns to mush. And it's not great for Cattleya roots, so I was looking for a solution to that, and so I'm going to try this granite and see how that works. Right behind it, we've got Rhyncholalia Cattleya. No, Rhyncholalia by itself, Rhyncholalia aristocrat. And this is the first type of Rhyncholalia I've ever had before. I bought it just like this. The previous owner had it potted in this leca, like the SH method, semi-hydro. And so I just decided to leave it, and it's got a couple new growths, starting to put out new roots. And I feel like this plant you could get 3 decent sized divisions out of. So I'm really thinking about dividing it, the reason because it's kind of crawling out of its pot there, and yeah, so that's something to watch out for. And then also, not a Cattleya, but just wanted to show you really quick, this is a ball moss. It is not a orchid, it is a type of bromeliad. It's related to Spanish moss. If you're from Texas, you've probably seen it on the trees down there. This actually came from Stephen Van Camp and Lewis's backyard, but I'm really excited because it's pushing out little bloom spikes. It had flowers last year, and these are the seeds. And I have put little seeds of this thing don't tell anybody. I've kind of hidden them around the greenhouse to see if they'll grow. And here's one right here. Let's see. They're tiny little seedlings. Let's see if you can, yeah, you can see them right there. Teeny tiny little seedlings, but eventually they'll grow up if no one disturbs them and be the same size as that parent plant of ball moss. So I think that's kind of cool. Flowers aren't supposed to be really pretty. They just have little blue petals on them, but I'm looking forward to seeing something different. The Cattleya that I entered in the global virtual orchid show on April 4th was this one. This is Jessie Lee. She looks quite different without any flowers on her, but I've repotted her into granite in a plastic pot, and she's starting to put out new roots and new growths and is actually looking pretty good. She's a really aggressive grower. I think she's got 3 new growths pushing out. And you can see also one thing that I think is going to be a bit of a disadvantage about this plant is that it's a climber. You can see how the new growth there is coming up so high on the previous growth. And so you can imagine that this is the kind of plant that would climb out of a pot in just 1 or 2 growths. But anyway, the flowers are gorgeous and I'm willing to deal with it. Okay, well, my favorite part of today's show is going to be showing you the Cattleya Rex seedlings. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that in 2014 I bought a flask of 25 Cattleya Rex seedlings off of eBay, believe it or not. And over the years, several have died, but several have survived and persisted. So last year we had our first 2 plants bloom, and then those plants had some root difficulties that were kind of exacerbated by my repotting them in an untimely fashion. But this year we have some new candidates for potential bloomers. So let's look at the plants that I think may be potential bloomers this year. We're going to start with this one. This plant actually bloomed last year. You can see the remnants of the bloom spike, and it's got a new growth on it. So the question is this plant going to bloom again this year? Now, a lot of times flowering takes a lot of energy out of a plant. You can tell these bulbs are very shriveled. They don't have anything left in them, right? The leaves are even folding up. So it's going to be really interesting to see. Even this newest bulb has got quite a bit of shriveling on it, right? So I personally don't think this is going to have enough to bloom this year, but who knows? The next candidate for blooming is back here, this monster. This is by far the biggest one. It's been mounted, it's been stuck to this piece of hickory bark since 2014 as a little seedling, and it has absolutely flourished. You can see it's been producing almost adult-sized leaves, and it's got 3 growths on it this year. So it's got this one here, which is looking very promising, and then if you can see down there, there's a 3rd one. So I'm feeling that at least one of these 3 new growths is going to be big enough to put out flowers. And wouldn't it be absolutely fantastic if all 3 growths bloomed? If that happens, I'm going to be very happy. Alright, let's go over here. Now, here's another plant. Here's another Cattleya Rex that the plant itself is pretty decent size. Got some nice new growth on it. The bulbs are a little bit shriveled, but it's got 2 new growths. This guy and this guy. To me, they don't look big enough to have spikes inside them, but you never know. It could. They possibly could. I personally don't think that these are big enough to bloom yet. And the last candidate, the last potential bloomer for this year that I think is a possibility is this plant. Now, the plant itself doesn't look that big, but if you look at the newest growth, it is disproportionately larger than the previous growths. And this makes me very suspicious that it could potentially have something inside of it. And this is exactly, by the way, what this plant did last year. If you'll notice, the leaves weren't that big, right? It wasn't that big of a plant, and even the newest bulb wasn't that big, but it bloomed. and it looked just like this when it came up last year. It was kind of a normal, seedling type size plant, but then the newest growth was just really unusually large. The good thing is this plant has got a much better root system than the other ones that I showed you, so it stands a good chance of putting up a flower this year. Now, just kind of looking at some of the other Cattleya rexes, this one is just now completing a new leaf, which it started back in the winter time. Usually these don't start new growth until January or February. The growth completes in the summertime, and then the flowers come out midsummer. So you can see this one, the new growth is starting to put out new roots. It's also been repotted into granite rock in a plastic pot, and so far so good. The roots seem to be doing all right with that one. So that, guys, is just about it. I have showed you pretty much everything I want to show you. And oh, just a quick message from my neighbor Joe. Joe, you have got a Oncidium, starts with an S, species name, it's a long one, but it's got 2 massive spikes on it. And yeah, you guys should get this thing. Okay, so we're gonna head over to my apartment right now, and I'm going to show you, I've got all of my slipper orchids in my apartment, and I've got a couple of them in bloom. So let's go over there and see what's going on. Okay, here we are in the apartment, and it is a terrible time of day to be recording because there's a lot of light coming in from the window, making everything look dark, but we will manage. Okay, first of all, let's look at this. This is, you may recognize, Cattleya rex with the seed pod. And it's been having issues growing roots for a while now. Every time it grows roots, some little snail will find the root tip and eat it. So it's got a new growth here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it here. I've given it a bleach treatment, which means I soaked it completely under water in a solution of water and bleach, and then I just, have let it dry out, and I'm just keeping it here, and hopefully we can get the plant somewhat rehydrated. You can see some of the leaves are actually starting to curl up. They're so dried out. The pseudobulbs are starting to kind of twist over. Not good. So I'm trying to get the plant as rehydrated as I can with the roots that it does have, so that it can hold on to the pod as long as it needs to, but also can put out a decent new growth this year. I don't expect this growth to be anywhere as near as big as this one because it simply has no roots. In fact, if you look at this new growth, this growth, well, actually last year's growth, this one, it did not put out a single root last year. All of the roots the plant have are starting on the previous growth, and that's because every time it tried to grow a root, they were destroyed by snails. So hopefully I've killed any possibility of snails in this pot now with the bleach solution, and hopefully the plant will put out some nice roots here so I can take it back to the greenhouse and it continue growing there. We've got some slipper orchids, all of my slippers here at the apartment, and really nice. This is Paphiopedilum, looking very handsome. And then up here, I don't know if you guys have seen this one. You've seen a little bit of it. Oh, come on. There we go. We have urbanianum. Looking very nice. Lighting is not great. You can see it's got a bud coming out here. And yeah, it's very nice. And something that actually really got me excited was this Phalaenopsis. I'm just going to pop it in the floor. Actually, no. If you look, there are, let's see if I can zoom. 1, 2, 3 spikes pushing out of this thing suddenly. I've never been so excited about a no ID Phalaenopsis before. This is going to be pretty amazing. I've redirected all the stray roots into the pot, and yeah, just looking forward to seeing this thing bloom. Also really happy about this Micheal Koopowitz. The new growths are coming along really nicely. This is the largest one here. And there's a teeny tiny one down here. Let's see. And what's really good is that it has been steadily producing roots. I don't know why it's... Oh, I know why it actually turned around like this. It's because this is the side that gets sun in the morning, and it was too hot. I think it was too warm, and the root was kind of shying away from the warmth. But it's got that one. It's got a nice new root pushing there, and then on the other side, it had a root that came down here and kind of went into the pot, and you can kind of see it in there pushing around. So that's great. New roots, new growths. Super happy that this is my first long-petaled Paph. I got it from Windy Hill Orchids a few years ago, and it has beautiful pale yellow flowers with purplish red petals that trail down about 40 centimeters. Really nice. So it's a very slow grower. It's definitely not the best specimen of this plant that's out there, but it's the first one I've ever had. I really like it. It's been a survivor for me, and this growth will hopefully bloom in about a year and a half if we're lucky. This plant was at the greenhouse and I just brought it home yesterday. This is a seedling of Paphiopedilum, again from Windy Hill, and you can see it's growing pretty well. Did well at the greenhouse, but I just figured I might as well bring it home so that I've got all my slippers here at home, and then everything else is over there at the greenhouse. And that's it, guys. Thank you for stopping by to check on my green pets. I hope everyone is staying well, staying healthy, staying sane, and until next time, happy growing, guys.